Welcome back once again to Stelmo's Rants and Raves. I'm Stelmo. I'll just jump right into this. John Solomon at Just the News has another article out, and the headline reads, "Willingness to circumvent will of voters, even by cheating, most pervasive among Dem elites," according to a survey. Yes. My first reaction is what is this? Some new news, or hasn't it been this way for quite some time? And they've been stealing elections for a very long time. Now they have gotten caught at it, and how much of a result or how much of a difference that's going to make? Well, we're going to have to wait and see. But anyway, let me read this first paragraph here. It says, "In the wake of several close elections and a few Republican upsets, Democrat Party elites are increasingly embracing rhetoric that suggests a growing contempt for the will of the voters and an eagerness to circumvent the democratic process to beat the opposition party." Yeah. So, look, I don't take exception with anything said here. I mean, I kind of believe it. Only they've been in this game for a long, long, long time. And I think it's far more pervasive than anyone has uncovered yet, because I believe that when you go in and some of these like blue cities and stuff, if and when you can cut out all the cheating, I think people would be surprised how many Republicans would win. And what's the reason for that? Because, a typical American doesn't want any of this nonsense that the Democrats, and I like to call them the Socialist Party of America, because that party co-opted the Democratic Party. And everyone was already fleeing the party because the Democrats had basically decided to how shall I be nicely? They stabbed their voters in the back by coming up with all of this nonsense that the voters don't want. And people, it actually started back with Ronald Reagan, and they were called the Reagan Democrats. Well, the Reagan Democrats have long ago become Republicans, and so many more have joined them. I have never believed for a second that in a place like San Francisco, that the people really want to send their children out to school where they have to walk around human excrement and use hypodermic needles and the like. See, I don't believe that for a second. Especially when you look at the price of real estate in these places, people don't want the value of their property coming down because of all of this nonsense. But they want us to believe that people want more and more and more of this. And I just, look, are there loony leftists out there in the world? Yes. Are there people who consider themselves Democrats because it's a family thing and they just can't bring themselves away from it? Absolutely. But with that being said, the Democrats have taken cheating to a whole new place. Look, I remember when Trump lost in 2020. And number one, I never believed he lost. But even what I thought was more egregious was how they stole 2 Senate seats in Georgia. And I'm not talking about 2 state Senate seats. I'm talking about 2 United States Senate seats in Georgia. Went to loony leftists. And everybody seemed to say, yeah, that's just how the vote turned out. Well, I don't believe for a second that's how the vote turned out. I believe Raffensperger, who finally got his just due here in this last election, he's finally got beat. And hopefully nobody gives him any kind of position in Georgia government. And hopefully this is his retirement. And hopefully when they get done with the investigation into the Georgia elections, perhaps Raffensperger will have a new home in one of the Georgia state prisons. But perhaps I'm expecting a little too much, but one never knows. Right now, they are apparently looking in search warrants have been executed and subpoenas have been issued and depositions are ongoing. And hopefully we have to remain optimistic about it because, look, Donald Trump is nearing the 18 months of his presidency. Pretty soon he's going to be halfway there. And he hasn't even scratched the surface with the corruption and voting problems that are in this country with what's happened now. The Republicans are truly, truly the do-nothing party. And that's the sad reality because voters no longer have an option. They can't vote Democrat because when those leftists, if and when those leftists ever assume complete power of having three branches of government, that will be the end of the United States as we know it. And this is not just some sort of hyperbole or something like that. This is the stark reality that we're facing because they don't like our government and they're looking to see it come down. But, the squishy Republicans can't even get the SAVE Act passed. And in part, who do we blame for that? That's certainly the Senate Majority Leader Thune is not wielding his power. And why? Because he doesn't want it to pass. He's a rhino. He wants to see all this deep spending brought back. And of course, apparently they all think we can just borrow money forever and as much as we want, and there's never going to be any problem because we can keep printing as much as we want. And boy, these people are in for a big surprise. And I think it's going to come around sooner rather than later because economically, we are not in a good position now. Yeah, I know our government and the president's telling us how good the economy is, but the reality is much different, and you can't escape. You cannot escape the economy. So, the only option that Republicans and conservatives have is to go with the Republican Party, which means that the primary is going to become even more important because if the voters don't continue to get rid of these rhinos and these deep staters, then the whole thing is going to collapse. I mean, actually, I think the whole thing's going to collapse anyway, because I don't see, for years now, we've heard members of both parties talking about how our spending is unsustainable at the levels we have. But as much as they believe it's unsustainable, they don't believe that they have a solution or perhaps I would be better off saying they don't have a solution that fits their narrative. So I don't know how this is all going to play out, but, they can't pass. 80% of America believes you should have ID to vote, and yet they can't get that passed. And one of the reasons they can't get it passed is, back when I think they might have had a chance, they wanted to add nonsense to the bill, and then they wonder why people turn against it. If you have an 80% issue, that's what you should go for, just that. Don't be tagging anything else along that you might not be able to get, because ultimately it works against you. Where if you would pass all of these things where you're on the 80% side, you're going to attract more and more voters come election time. To me, that's a simple way to move forward. But yet these Republicans, really, what have they got done in almost 2 years? Very little, very, very little. You look back at the first 2 years of the Biden term, and they had gotten as degenerate and as sick and everything else as Biden was. They still were able to muster more legislation than the Republicans can with Trump at the helm. Now, that's not necessarily Trump's fault, although I believe Trump plays a role here. He needs and maybe he has had a private conversation with Thune, telling him, because he's up for re-election in 2 years. He's now got to be starting up to look at that. So he's got 2 years of fighting the president ahead of him before his re-election. Good luck with that. Good luck with that. You know, they may say Donald Trump is a lame duck, which he is as far as the presidency goes on. But the power of Donald Trump is going to last, I think, far beyond this election. Because people know that if we don't get straightened out really, really soon, this country will no longer exist in its current form. Yeah, all this land is going to be here. The people, for the majority of them, are going to be here. But their government is what's going to be much different. And trust me when I tell you this, they're not going to like the government that they end up with. But we'll wait and see how this plays out. You know, I agree that the Democrats will do whatever is possible. And let me make one last point here. You know, I have always considered the Democratic proactive, whereas the Republicans are reactive. So you can almost bet that the Democrats are coming up or conjuring up new ways to cheat. And come this election, I think we're going to see some of them. Hopefully those things will get sorted out in the courts, where we may have to face some leftist judges. So there's a lot of headwinds in our future. We just got to stick with it. And with that, I wish you all a good day. I wish you all an upcoming happy Memorial Day. And stay safe. It's a crazy world. Be careful when you're around large crowds, because you never know when some loon is going to cause havoc. Thank you. Bye-bye.